Hello, I'm Harrison Orr, and this is my ethics project. I'm going to be looking at three real life cases of ethics violations relating to technology. The first one we'll look at relates to torrenting, otherwise known as peer to peer file sharing on college campuses. As we know, torrenting is a major issue for institutions. Every year, the RIAA and the MPAA send tens of thousands of infringement notices to educational institutions. The institution then forwards these to the alleged offenders. What happens to the guilty party depends on institutional policies, but it usually involves a visit to the dean's office and some sort of penalty. The article highlighted is about the University of Illinois. At Illinois, university policy states that students that receive infringement notices have their access to internet shut off. The user is informed and required to meet with a hearing officer in which they will discuss the violation and university policy regarding copyright infringement. The student's internet access will remain shut down until the meeting takes place. After the third warning, the student will never be allowed to access the internet again in his or her dorm room. Again, this is just at Illinois. There are different penalties at different institutions. The University of Illinois Senior Security Outreach Specialist Brian Mertz says that they receive up to 100 copyright infringement notices a month. One student who was caught last year, it took her almost 2 weeks to get back online after the first warning. She still has no clue what she did wrong, and you can see her comment here. I have uTorrent on my computer, but I was never active at school, and I didn't use the school's internet to download anything because it was too slow, which is a fantastic quote, by the way. Staff are not immune to the problem as well. In fact, Mr. Mertz says we had one faculty member who had repeat violations, and they were actually asked to leave the university because it was such an ongoing problem. In 2010, the U.S. government added a new requirement for colleges and universities to stop illegal file sharing on their networks at the risk of losing federal funding. In response, schools across the country have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars installing anti-file sharing systems on their networks and updating their policies. Moral of the story is that torrenting is a risky game. The institution is not a safe haven for torrenting and does not act as a barrier between copyright holders and infringers. Faculty and staff are treated no different than students. So it's possible you may not get caught, and if you do, you may get a slap on the wrist the first time, but continue and you may get slapped with a lawsuit by the copyright holder, and you may be fired. So it's a high-risk game. The second case we will look at involves one of my favorite things, college football. This case involves Florida State University and had direct repercussions on the athletic department. The NCAA determined that a former learning specialist, an academic advisor, and a tutor gave improper assistance to Florida State athletes who were taking online courses. According to the NCAA, the former learning specialist typed portions of papers for at least 3 athletes and provided answers to an online psychology course quiz for others. Overall, the scandal involved 61 athletes across 10 athletic programs, most notably being football. FSU self-imposed suspensions for 24 football players for the 2007 Music City Bowl, which they lost to Kentucky. FSU also suspended 10 players for the first 3 games of the 2008 season and voluntarily dropped 6 scholarships between 2008 and 2010. In addition to the self-imposed penalties, the NCAA punished FSU with the loss of more scholarships, but more severely ordered that FSU vacate any and all wins in which those student athletes, which the NCAA deemed ineligible, participated in during that time frame. FSU appealed, arguing that since they did not know the player was ineligible at the time, then the game should count and the wins from that time period should not be vacated. However, the instant a player cheated in class, regardless of whether school officials knew about it, they became ineligible, so the wins must be vacated. Eventually, FSU dropped the appeal and vacated 12 wins in football, 22 wins in men's basketball, and an NCAA postseason baseball victory, as well as a national championship in men's track and field. It is important to remember that FSU self-reported these violations to the NCAA. Dennis Thomas, the vice chair of the NCAA Committee on Infractions, was quoted as saying, "Yes, Florida State did self-report. They did an outstanding job. We have to give Florida State University credit for that." My big takeaway from this story is that student athletes were cheating in a basic online class. These are general ed courses that we all must check the box on before we move on to our core curriculum classes. As an instructor or administrator, it is vital to place integrity of the institution above the success of the athletic program. If the students can't make the cut, that's on them. Don't create another problem by giving them improper help. The final case we will look at comes from the University of Central Florida, where in 2010 a cheating scandal rocked the university when roughly 1/3 of the students in a capstone business class taught by Professor Richard Quinn cheated on a midterm exam. 1/3 of any class cheating is a big deal, but when the class has approximately 600 students, it garners national attention, as is the case for this instance. The students had gained access to a question bank for the midterm exam. Professor Quinn eventually found out after a student tipped him off, and thankfully for us, his response was recorded. I'll let Professor Quinn explain the situation.
When the midterm exam ended on Friday a week ago, I looked at the data from the midterm exam. The exam was running about a grade and a half higher than it ever had run before. I thought that was rather interesting. Over the course of the past 4 or 5 days, your lab instructors, academic services, and the Office of the Dean have begun and are continuing a forensic analysis of not only all of the data, but all of the available traffic over all of the available environments that possibly could provide us with better information about where this started and how widespread it is. Right now, we've narrowed the pool of participants to about a third of the class. When you get into your labs this week, look at the person on your left side, look at the person on your right side. Statistically, one of them cheated on the exam. At the end of this week, we will turn our findings over to academic affairs. And at that point in time, the options and the results and the conclusions are out of our hands. They will do what they need to do to protect the integrity of the university and to protect the integrity of the college. So here's the deal. If you participated in this, you have a choice. You can sit back in silence and hope your name doesn't get caught in the net, which is very quickly closing around the participants, or identify yourself to your lab instructor. If you do that, get to complete the rest of the course. The grade you get in the course is the grade you earn in the course. And providing you complete a 4-hour ethics course being offered by the folks over in academic affairs, any permanent record of this will be wiped from your transcript. I've also been in contact with every single one of the major publishers who publishes textbooks that are used by the College of Business. They're not only aware of it, but 2 of those publishers have turned the matter over to their legal staffs to pursue whatever legal action comes out of the investigation. To say I'm disappointed is beyond comprehension. Physically ill, absolutely disgusted, completely disillusioned, trying to figure out what was the last 20 years for. For those of you out there who acted ethically and acted honorably and did it right, you have my undying gratitude and my utmost respect. For those of you who took the shortcut, don't call me. Don't ask me to do anything for you ever. The midterm exam grades are being tossed. Whatever you scored on the midterm exam no longer exists. Everybody in the capstone course is going to be required to retake a new midterm exam. I don't care what's on your schedule. I don't care what you have planned. If you have to give birth, you're going to give birth in the exam room. Because it's going to have to take a signed, hand-delivered note from God for you to get out of taking this midterm exam.